For the month of December, we have been considering the concept of devotion. Last week we considered the deep devotion of John the Baptist, a man whose entire existence was an example of devotion. Today, with Christmas approaching, we will consider the devotion of Mary, the mother of Jesus. Mary is traditionally understood as an example of unconditional love and purity. And Mary has held an honored position in Christian theology and tradition since early in church history. For much of church and Christian tradition, Mary was honored as the God carrier, the God bearer, for her role as the mother of Jesus. The idea being that when pregnant, Mary did not just carry the human aspect of Jesus, she also carried divinity. But Mary's status within the church has actually changed a lot over the years. In the mid-1800s, the Catholic Church tradition of honoring Mary reached new heights with the addition of the Catholic doctrine of Immaculate Conception. The doctrine of Immaculate Conception is not about the virgin birth of Jesus, but it's about Mary herself. Immaculate Conception is the belief that Mary herself was miraculously born and without any sin. So Mary is not just a saint in the traditional church, Mary is like a super saint. And while the Catholic Church has continued to honor and revere Mary as a particularly special saint, Protestants like us have instead tended to focus on her ordinary nature. For Protestants, which is our tradition, what's special about Mary is her lack of specialness. To us Protestants, Mary shows us that God uses ordinary people at the bottom. To Protestants, the selection of Mary by God was an example of God's undeserved grace. So whether we view Mary like the Catholics, as so special she is without sin, or whether we view Mary like the Protestants, as so ordinary that God's grace is unmistakable, the one thing we can all agree on is the central role that Mary played in the story of Jesus Christ. Pretty much all Christians see Mary as a symbol of loving devotion. Mary was there at the birth. Mary was there when the wise men appeared. She was there at age 12 when Jesus taught the temple elders and priests. And while Joseph disappears from the story after Christ's 12th birthday, Mary was there when Jesus started his ministry. It was Mary who requests the first miracle. It was Mary who asked Jesus to get involved at a big marriage when the party ran out of wine. You remember that story, right? Jesus responded to Mary's request by turning water into really good wine. The mother of Mary, or the mother of Jesus, was present for his teachings, and she was there for many miracles. She was at the cross when he was crucified. Mary is widely honored both inside and outside of Christianity for these reasons. For example, Mary is considered the most holy and sacred woman in history, according to the teachings of Islam. I wonder if we Protestants, too, should maybe take more notice of this amazing woman. For who else exemplifies goodness, parenthood, devotion, and love like her? In the scripture passage we just read, we're first introduced to Mary, and this occurs very early in the Gospel of Luke. Interestingly, Luke is the gospel writer who is most inclusive of women overall, where women play central roles at every stage of Christ's life. It's only in the Gospel of Luke that records the angel's visit to Mary, unlike the Gospel of Matthew, where the angel visits Joseph. Luke tells us that the angel Gabriel was sent by God to a virgin named Mary in the town of Nazareth. And it doesn't give any reason for Mary's selection by God except that she is the favored one. Mary is described as a virgin who is betrothed or engaged to a man named Joseph. You're probably aware the custom in those times was for marriages to be arranged by the young woman's father. The betrothal was considered official once the father agrees, but the young woman would normally continue living at home with her father for another year after such an agreement was made. And then after that year had passed, the groom, as arranged by the bride's father, would come and take her to his home, and the wedding celebration would begin, and it would last for about a week. Ancient people could really throw a party. Imagine if every wedding today included a week-long party. But legally, the marriage is really sealed during the engagement. In those days, Mary's consent was not needed. What was considered important was her father's wishes. Marriage in biblical times was mostly an agreement between men, with women treated like property or maybe like children. It was during this time between Mary's betrothal and the wedding that an angel appears to Mary. It is through an angel that Mary first hears of her special role and the importance of her baby-to-be. This angel, Gabriel, is also found in the Old Testament. You may remember him from the book of Daniel. This time, Gabriel comes to Mary to announce the coming birth. Gabriel tells Mary that she's going to bear a son who will be holy, and his name shall be Jesus. And he tells that Jesus will be great, Son of the Most High, and that he will reign over Israel forever. Mary responds, "What? How could that be? I'm a virgin." And Gabriel answers Mary, saying, "The baby will be created by the power of God and will be known as the Son of God." Then Gabriel continues, telling Mary about the soon-to-be birth of John the Baptist, her older relative Elizabeth, who had been considered barren, too old to become a mother. And if Elizabeth, who's too old, could have a child, so maybe Mary, who was too young, could too. For in God nothing is impossible. Then Mary gives her consent, agreeing to this pregnancy, knowing full well that it would be at great personal risk given the law of Moses and its punishment for illegitimate pregnancies. Now, the fact that Luke takes time to tell us that Mary had given her consent is actually a big deal. It's really quite startling. In contrast, the Gospel of Matthew is focused on Joseph, not on Mary, when telling the exact same story. In Matthew, the angel doesn't go to Mary, but to Joseph for his permission. Matthew's version reflects how society worked in ancient times. A woman's consent was nowhere near as important as the man's, and in this case, Joseph's cooperation was therefore also vital. So while Matthew reflects how things would have been expected to play out in those times, Luke, by his focus on Mary's journey and Mary's consent, perhaps shows us how it should be. Mary's consent, her control of her own body, her control of her own destiny is important to Luke's telling of the story. Important also because it illustrates that God does not trample over our free will, even for a mission as important as Mary's, the mother of Jesus. The story only moves forward with the consent of those involved. The birth story of Jesus, as told in Luke, is a story of miracles. First, the appearance of an angel, and then two women who shouldn't be having babies are. Christmas time is a great time to talk about angels and about new birth. But angels are particularly a big part of Christmas story. And an encounter with an angel is an amazing spiritual experience and an experience of God that is available to all those who are open to it, depending on God's will. Angels are important to many churches. Here at St. John's, we traditionally have a display of angels in our hallway at Christmas time. Please take a look at it if you get a chance, showing various depictions of angels that remind us of this story. What do you think? Do you believe in angels? Do you have to believe in angels to be Christian? I mean, my feeling is that being a Christian is mostly about trusting in God through Jesus and not so much about trusting in angels. Belief in angels is not a requirement, but it's also can be important as one of the ways that people throughout history and still today leave themselves open to a spiritual experience. Ideally, our trust in God grows deep enough to leave that door open for a miracle, for us to be touched somehow by love. Whether that's a verbal communication from an angel, as it was for Mary, or maybe it's a healing, or maybe a vision, or a dream, or just a sudden expansion in spiritual perspective. It's helpful for each of us to be open to such experiences, even, or maybe particularly, from a stranger. The Bible reminds us to always treat strangers and outsiders with respect, because those strangers may also be an angel. The Bible records spiritual experiences in many different ways. Sometimes an angel, sometimes fire, a burning bush, Pentecostal flames, or a vision, a healing, sometimes a visit from Mary herself. Have you ever had a visit from Mary? Not as common in the Protestant world. Visits from Mary are far more common in the Catholic and Orthodox traditions, because perhaps they're more open to that kind of spiritual experience. It's happened a lot in Europe and Italy over the years, and it's also central to Mexico's history. I don't know if you're aware of the history of Mexico, but shortly after the Catholic tradition was imposed on Mexico by the Spaniards, Mary herself appeared to a humble Aztec farmer. Do you know this story? It's very interesting. Pretty much everyone in Mexico does. It's foundational to their faith history and to their national identity. Mary appeared herself almost as an angel 4 times in Mexico City over 500 years ago. When people talk about this experience, they refer to her as Our Lady of Guadalupe. As this famous story goes, Mary appeared to an Aztec farmer who had recently converted to Christianity named Juan Diego, who reported the experience to the Spaniards, to the Spanish archbishop specifically in Mexico City. So he goes to the archbishop and says, I saw Mary on top of this hill. And the archbishop says, yeah, sure you did. Mm-hmm. I want proof. Get out of here. So Juan Diego returns to the hilltop, to the mountaintop, and he encounters Mary again. And this happens a number of times, but in the end, Mary tells him, pick some roses there. See those roses grow? Pick those and wrap those in a cloth, in your garment, your cloth, your extra cloth you're carrying, and take those roses to the bishop. That's your proof. That's what Mary tells Juan Diego. This is in itself very strange because it was wintertime. It's not a time when roses grow in Mexico. So Juan picked the roses, wrapped them in his cloth, and took them to the bishop, who opened to find these roses out of season. And not just any roses. This is personal for the bishop, because the roses in the cloth were a variety of roses that only grew in a small area in his hometown in Spain. And also the cloth, when unfurled, the cloth carrying the roses had miraculously changed on its journey to the bishop, and there now showed this portrait of Mary, exactly as Juan had met her. The bishop was blown away by the proof and agreed to build a church on that spot and to place that garment with Mary's likeness at that church for all to see. This is a photo of the proof that Mary had actually appeared to this farmer, Juan Diego, and it continues to baffle scientists to this day by both its construction and its longevity. You can go to Mexico City and see the original article today. Lisa and I did in 2016. The appearance of Mary, as seen by some, is the proof of the validity of Christianity even in Aztec country, while others see it as an intrusive example of Christian colonialism made more palatable through folklore. You can make up your own mind. Today, the church dedicated to Mary in Mexico City that houses this cloth is the most visited Catholic shrine in the world. And it's actually the 3rd most visited sacred site of any religion. To this day, Mary, as Our Lady of Guadalupe, is considered the Queen of Mexico, honored by all Mexicans, no matter their religion. So did Mary really appear? I think the point here is not proving if this is a real spiritual experience or if this appearance of Mary was real, but rather to leave the possibility open as part of our appreciation of the mysteries of life. To leave ourselves open to experience something beyond ourselves. I think it's important that we be open to God, be open even to supernatural experience of God, because otherwise we might miss it. Particularly in this age of science and reason, think about your own experience, your own mindset, your own attitude. If an experience of God happened to you, would you recognize it? Would you be able to accept it? As an engineer, I can tell you that I would not believe such things were possible, period, no way, if I had not experienced it myself. If I had not experienced the spiritual, if I had not experienced the miraculous myself. Does your belief system allow spiritual experiences? If not, why not? Having a spiritual experience doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see an angel or Mary or even have a vision. It doesn't have to look or feel like that. But I'll tell you this, you'll know you've had a spiritual experience because your life will change in positive and noticeable ways, in ways that mirror Jesus and his example, in ways that make us more loving people, in ways that allow us to be an expression of love in all that we do and in all that we touch. In the Christmas story, Mary's life changed drastically as she became Jesus' mother after her encounter, after her spiritual experience. And following Jesus is one of the most important lessons we can learn from Mary. To follow Jesus' example as faithfully as Mary. To love as unconditionally as Mary did. The story of Mary also reminds us to look for Jesus, to look for God, not so much in the powerful, not among the rich, but among the outcast, among the weak, among the oppressed. The Bible tells us that Mary is favored by God, but at no point does Mary receive the favors of society. Mary never receives worldly wealth or power. Wealth and power and position have never been the essence of God's blessings, have never been the essence of love. And that's important for a small church like us to remember, that perhaps we are blessed by our insignificance. We are blessed by being ordinary, by not being big and flashy. And we are a small church, yes, but one that is open to growth and transformation in accordance to the plan of love. For example, how many other churches our size provided over 7,000 meals and over 700 presents this Christmas time, Tuesday, for our neighbors who are struggling to make ends meet? We feed the hungry because that's the Jesus we know. The Jesus who fed the 5,000, the Jesus that we experience here in our humble church. The same Jesus whose birthday we honor this week, not just as the Son of God, no, as the Son of Mary as well.